folks. Welcome to the third in this series of webinars. It's the Life Goals Masterclass, and we're bringing you this with Bajaj Allianz. And the topic of discussion today is something that's very, very critical. I mean, it's something that we are looking at almost always in our life, and I'm talking about education and upskilling. We're looking at education when it's people in our family, children, and many times we're looking at education for ourselves as well. Constantly being sort of in that zone of upgrading yourself, your knowledge quotient. So what role does insurance play in all of this? How do you plan? How is the costing model evolving? And generally, how do you keep finances in mind when you are looking to meet this very important goal of knowledge, education, and learning? That's what we will talk about. I'm Surabhi Upadhyay, and joining me to take the conversation forward are Narayana Ramaswamy, Partner and Sector Head, Education and Skill Development at KPMG India, Kashyap Dalal, Co-Founder and Chief Business Officer at Simply Learn, and Amit Jaiswal, Chief of Proprietary Sales and In-House Web Sales at Bajaj Allianz Life Insurance. Gentlemen, thank you for taking out the time and joining in and being a part of this chat. A very interesting and important subject, I thought, because as I said, right, one thing that the pandemic has taught us is that COVID or no COVID, life goes on. Business continuity is the order of the day, and you need to be geared with all the required skill sets and make sure that you're relevant for the workforce, for the job force. Either you, members in your family, children in your family, the like. So I want to, get some opening thoughts in, and Narayan, you tell us what are the key trends that you've observed, say over the last 12 very, very unusual months in this time.
You know what? There are many who say that this COVID-19 and associated lockdown has been a blessing in disguise. And let me explain what I mean by that. The whole world has been talking about how technology can be put to use, and education has been one sector that has been a bit of a laggard in terms of usage of digital technologies and online formats and other things. What this lockdown has done, it's just accelerated the pace at which acceptance of some of these mediums for the educator as well as the learner is concerned. So what I see is this 12 months or in 10 to 12 months has brought about a change that many have been trying to do for a decade or so since the internet came into existence. You're going to see a very different format in terms of learning. You're going to see an extended phase of learning. Gone are those days where learning is only for the younger lot. It's going to be lifelong learning because things are changing so rapidly. You can't sit back on your laurels and say that I've learned all those things when I was 25 and then expect that to keep you good as you go. So there is going to be constant reskilling, constant upskilling that's going to be order of the day. There's going to be digital technologies and online platforms and blended formats of learning that is going to be here for good. And to that extent, there's going to be a massive reinvention that needs to happen for everybody, not just the young learner.
Okay, those are interesting points, and I'm going to come back to some of them. Let me bring in Kashyap into the conversation as well. And Kashyap, I guess you and your team at Simply Learn probably saw this opportunity early on, right, and realized that this is going to be the order of the day. This constant need to upskill and keep yourself relevant. Tell us, what are the trends that you've noticed in the past couple of years, the profile of people who are coming in on the platform, and also what COVID-19 meant for a business like you?
Sure, Surabhi. At Simply Learn, we've been seeing a gradual uptick on this entire, shift towards ongoing learning, as Narayanan was talking about. This is something that over the last decade we've seen continuously going up. That if I think about the early 2000s, most working professionals used to think about upskilling as something that the company would do for them. And in the last 10 years, growing realization has been more this, that if somebody wants to accelerate his career, then he needs to pick up the skills which are critical and reinvent his career multiple times to basically make sure that he's growing. And that is something that is really accelerated with COVID. So COVID has done two things. I think on one side, the entire shift towards digital businesses It has made people wake up to the realization that the job that they've been doing for the last 20 years, probably the same way it cannot continue. There's going to be a lot of reinvention, a lot of transition in the industry, a lot of roles are going to change. They're going to get automated. They're going to require new skills for a person to keep growing in his career. And that realization is helping the entire upskilling space in a huge way. The second disruption that COVID has enforced on the industry in a lot of ways is the entire shift towards digital learning. That one is obviously you need to upskill because the entire industry is changing. The second is more the way in which, or the pedagogy in which a person is learning, and there the entire acceptance of digital. That when you are forced that you are at your home, that's the only way that you can learn. Suddenly, the entire comfort level and people waking up to the realization that whatever inhibitions or inertia that existed before, when they were forced into this, even forget about learning, even in social life, suddenly instead of meeting people, you're doing WhatsApp calls every day, right? It creates a different level of comfort with technology, different level of confidence in the technology, that if I want to learn, I can learn virtually. It's not anything different. You can get a great experience by learning online. So I think in both ways, for the entire upskilling industry, it's been an absolute transformation, and we've definitely seen the entire tailwinds as a result of that, in the sector as a whole. The people waking up to the need to learn on an ongoing basis, as well as internet being able to provide an experience that's brilliant and doesn't really need an offline classroom anymore. So those are the two large macro trends that we've seen in our business.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was first people had to start learning about the new learning tools and how to get on those Zoom calls, how to get these, platforms sorted out, your bandwidth issues sorted out. So it was first how to, learn to use the new learning tools, so to speak. That was the first step in the pandemic, I suppose. Amit, let me bring you in the conversation. I think a lot of my questions on the financing aspect will come to you a little later. But first, broad thoughts on just the kind of trends that you observe around this, the aspiration, just the need to start thinking about education as something which is going to require planning from a financial standpoint.
Okay, thanks, Surabhi. So honestly, it's while the pandemic's really made us relook at a lot of things, but providing for one's child's education has always been the top aspiration for every parent, especially in India. And we at Bajaj Allianz had a survey last year with Kantar. It was called the Bajaj Allianz Life India's Life Goals Preparedness Survey, and which clearly showed it. Unfortunately, what it also showed us was that 50% of Indians find it difficult to achieve their child's education goals. So, while everybody is aspiring that you want to spend their kids to the best of places to study, but what we've also seen is they are not financially ready to meet those expenses. And we've also seen that cost of education has been going up tremendously. Just to give you an idea, the fees for an IIM is as high as 20 to 25 lakh rupees today, while 5 years back it was just 12 lakh rupees. And we all know these stories about the US, where people pass out from the best of universities, and most of them, when they're getting into the jobs, they're actually getting into it with a huge debt. And that is something that we can see coming in here. People are not prepared well enough. So I think it's very important that when you start planning, people have to start planning for the future, building into inflation, looking at how much money they would require, and they need to start planning early. And this is one place where I think people miss out on. For example, if you've got a child who's 7 years or 8 years, then you say 10 years down the line, you want to send the child to a good medical institute. You need to be ready, saying, this is the kind of expenses I would require by then. And if this is where my current income is, would I be in a position to support the kid? Well, mostly the answer to that would be no. So then you need to start investing, and you need to start investing wisely. And the thing that you've got to be very careful about here is that something that people need to understand is you have to keep the long-term focus here. See, the one thing about long-term investment, be it for child education or for anything else, is it always gives you the advantage of power of compounding, the rupee cost advantage. And when you start investing early, it's going to really help you.
Sure.
What I would also say is, today there are a lot of tools available. They're calculators. Even on our website, we've got calculators for you, where anybody can just get there and just type in what their goals are, and it'll give you approximately the kind of money you would require and the kind of investments you would require to take you there. So
I'm going to ask you more about this, Amit, because my only problem with this is that a lot of what the financial services world offers is more traditional approach to goal planning, right? And you're talking about child's education. That's a big goal, of course. But again, I mean, some of the points that Narayan and Kashyap made, they're a little more evolving as we go. I mean, they're applicable to individuals themselves as well, not necessarily their children. So perhaps, and all of it requires money, right? So I'm going to come back to that and how to perhaps club that with some of the other products that you could look at. But Narayan, before we get down to the money business, tell us a bit more about the trends. What is it that people are seeking out there? I mean, I hear a lot of people very interested on knowing more about social media related courses, digital marketing. Coding is something extremely big these days when it comes to kids. I mean, there are so many new coding companies that are coming up. So you tell us, what is the marketplace throwing up as some of the biggest trends?
You know what, say, there is a big shift that is happening, in terms of what is required in the industry. There are many people who have talked about, there was a World Economic Forum report also that talked about what is the future of jobs. Now, that when the transition happens, it's usually difficult to know that there is a big change that is happening. That's what we are going through. And one aspect of that is what is called as the technology skills or digital skills. Today, there isn't a job where you can live without the digital skills. So take banking, for example, it looks like a disguised IT company. Take entertainment, half of it or more than half is happening on the digital media. Now, education is following, healthcare. I mean, you can go on. So each job role is changing to include something on the technology. Now, technology is not as ubiquitous, but there are some specifics in that. For example, there are things that with relating to computing that are changing. People are already talking about extreme computing, but even on the go, there are things that are changing. On the industry front, we talk about Industry 4.0, where we are talking about extreme automation. We are talking about Internet of Things. We are talking about augmented reality, a whole bunch of stuff which remained as technical mumbo jumbo at some point of time. Now it has become a reality and something that I need to know if I need to perform my job well. So that is one change. The second change that is happening is a bit more societal. People are used to gig workers and gig economies and gig jobs now. I see the younger lot not interested in being in a lifetime in a particular job. It's not so much only the job content, even the outlook of today's youngsters, which I guess is going to be the rule going forward, is not to look at very long term, partly because there's nothing called long term, things are changing so rapidly. Also because my outlook to life is, let me learn, let me deliver and live for today in that sense. And the third thing that is happening because of the pandemic and other things is what I call, and also a combination of this, is the need for a greater emotional intelligence, which many times we ignore. We look at only the technology and the hard aspects of it. But increasingly, we see a need for that bit of being stable. There is also an employer who needs to provide that, but each individual is also now looking at a longevity, not in the job, but in terms of how do you sustain when things are changing. So I would think changes are happening across, and technology being the most prominent, most visible out of them. And hence, job roles change, and hence the need to be skilled changes beyond even the technical hard skills.
I think you've made some very, very important points, Narayan. And I can tell you this, that as someone who follows personal finance, I think that would be the single biggest challenge for all personal finance practitioners to sort of reimagine the rules, the traditional rules of 10-year goals, 7-year goals. Life is not that predictable anymore. Needs, aspirations, situations, everything around us is changing far more dramatically. So how do you keep your financial planning flexible enough to meet these changes? I think that's a very important point. Kashyap, you tell us, what's the kind of profile of people who are coming in that you see around to upskill, upgrade, and again, same question. What are the hot areas or the hot courses, so to speak?
Sure. So, Surabhi, I think the entire transition that we've seen over the last 5-10 years, and what was the kind of learning that people were looking at earlier, and how it has evolved over the entire period, has been a very, very exciting journey. So, I mean, if I think about the early, after 2010, so 2010 to 2013 period, lot of the skilling used to be around slightly more traditional areas like project management, Six Sigma, ITIL, and stuff like that. These are more process management certifications, and lot of the IT jobs demanded these certifications, and that was what was driving the entire move towards it, that people want to skill in these areas. Then since 2015 we've seen the entire advent of data being a huge trend. So lot of demand for courses in big data, Hadoop, data science, and all the technologies around that entire piece, whether it's R or Python, and so on. And then in the last 3 to 4 years, we've again started seeing a next level shift, that a lot of the, so while data continues to be a very hot trend, but a lot of technology skills, whether it's digital marketing, whether it's cloud, whether it's cyber security, DevOps, so it's continuously evolving. And the really exciting part is more this, that when I look at the entire impact of digital, I can see it kind of moving in concentric circles, that you have a technology, and initially there is demand for the core technology, and then after that the impact of that technology starts coming through, saying that now that technology is impacting different roles in the organization, and therefore what is the skilling program that is needed by those impacted roles, and how do they, whatever they were doing earlier in the new scheme of things, how is that role going to transform, and what is the program that is going to basically aid in that journey, right? So it's kind of a expanding raindrop, if you may, that basically it's, as technology takes over and as the entire digital transformation happens, all roles are going through transformations, and every 2-3 years there is a new wave of skills which are coming out in the entire digital skills arena, and that's really exciting to see how it's evolving every 2-3 years, and new programs are coming in. But I mean, just to call out the hot trends right now would be cloud, data, digital marketing, cyber security, programming for sure. I think full stack development, I mean, for professionals, obviously it continues to be a hot driver of a lot of career growth. But as you were mentioning, I think lot of uptake in the K-12 space as well, where kids learning programming, and the entire wave that we are seeing over there. I mean, it's only kind of indicating that people are seeing this, that the future is highly tech oriented, and therefore if your kids are also comfortable with technology, then it's going to get easier for them to adapt to all of these things in the future. So I think that's one part of the entire story. The other part of the story that we see in the entire skilling area, that especially professionals and the kind of skilling programs they are seeing value in, is this entire thought of convergence, that for middle to senior roles, one of the very strong trends that we see is more this, that gone are the days of being in a silo, that you are an expert in one skill and you will keep on doing that till the end of the world, right? So more and more the level of chaos, level of change, level of the pace of innovation, what it is driving is more that you need multi-skilled professionals. There's a concept of a T-shaped skill profile, that you might be an expert in one domain, but you need to have a general appreciation of a lot many more things to be able to adapt to the pace of change that's happening. And we are seeing a lot of uptake in that direction, that basically people are realizing it, that I may be a data professional, but I need to know cloud, I need to know data security and stuff like that, and that's driving a lot of the skilling demand that we are seeing.
Right, very interesting. I already feel so overwhelmed. I think I should join some 5 classes right away myself right now, because that's the charm, that's the beauty of learning, right? Now let's start coming down to costs, and let's break this up, gentlemen. Amit, if I could just extend the point, if we're talking about some of the professional courses, the professional upskilling programs, typically what are the costs we're looking at? Because the one attraction of digital as a model is obviously that you're supposed to pay, of course, a fraction of the cost that you would have if you'd gone to an overseas university and then done the same course, right? So give us some sense of the money required here.
Sense of the money required, it varies, and honestly, thought that these digital courses are not that expensive is not really that true also, because I myself, something building on what Kashyap had shared a little while ago. Continuous upskilling, I think I'm somebody who's from an old school. I've an old MBA who went through the regular Philip Kotler, the hardcore brick and mortar model of working. But I think in the last 5 years, I've had to really upskill myself. I've done a lot of online courses. Believe you me, they're not really that cheap. But again, it's very relative when you say they're not cheap or they're expensive. But I'm saying what's really important is no matter what you looking at, you have to have the right kind of instruments. And this is where I've seen, while, we can say it's a fraction of a cost today, but that fraction of cost, say, against, say, you pay, say, about 25 lakh rupees for a full-time course, but this cost would cost you 3 lakh or 4 lakh. But then we also have to look at the 3 lakh or 4 lakh today in India. Is it still something that anybody or everybody can afford?
So no, you still have to plan for it, yeah.
Precisely, you still have to plan for it. And this is where it gets very interesting. There are a lot of, so today when you start going out and deciding where you want to invest, you get a lot of instruments that are there you can invest in. But finally, it's very important. You should be very clear what your goal is and how are you prepared for it. So just to give you a simple idea, I think it's very prudent to have some guaranteed income cash flow from your investments, so that you're sure whether if it's for yourself or for your child, a certain amount is guaranteed to come in. And we were surprised ourselves. Bajaj Allianz, a survey that we talked about, the Life Goals Preparedness Survey, revealed that more than 50% of Indians viewed life insurance as a preferred investment option to achieve their child's education life goals. And that was quite interesting. And then we looked at what really works here. And some of the advantages that came out, we saw that people said why they were looking at life insurance was, they said that it provides disciplined savings towards the long-term objective. The tax benefits are also there. And there's also that life cover, which takes care of any eventualities. Then the concept of guaranteed benefits, and I just want to spend a little bit of time here. So one thing that the entire pandemic has done for us is the concept of guaranteed has suddenly become very, very important for people. So people are getting a little conservative. So this guaranteed word really is starting to play very heavily on people's minds. And I would say people need to be participating in India's growth story through market-linked products. That's their one way to invest. So there's something that we did. We in Bajaj Allianz, we launched a new product which was called the Bajaj Allianz Life Flexi Income Goal. Just to tell you what we've done with this product, and this is something which is very unique. We've given flexibility to receive or accumulate survival benefits. We're talking about cash bonuses. We're talking about guaranteed monthly income and guaranteed benefit, flexibility to choose cash bonus from the first month onwards. So Surabhi, as you would know, traditionally insurance is something where the biggest challenge people have had said was liquidity. But here we talk about something that gives you an income from the first month onwards. So we've also seen this, and we realize that, when people are saying they're looking at life insurance as one of the major avenues to invest from their child education or their own education, whatever. So this is what we're trying to do. I think we're trying to provide the best instruments for people to invest in. So I'm saying the costs are there, but you need to still be planned for it. It's like people can say the costs have come down drastically, but believe you me, that cost is still a big amount, and it's only going higher.
Yeah, let me actually bring in Narayanan and Kashyap into this as well. Again, just to get sort of some idea of the numbers. Narayanan, would you agree when the average cost of any online course on the digital side, if you're looking at upskilling, ballpark, would it be around the 2 to 3 lakh figure that Amit just gave us?
Well, it's kind of difficult to put an average in that too in the early stages of digital education that we are in, but because we're talking about anywhere between few hours to even a complete degree program that can be available online. So in my view, it can start from few thousand rupees for a hobby learning that you can do online to virtually a postgraduate program or even PhD programs that they do online today. So I do agree with Amit that it's not as if the costs have kind of come down in a generic sense, right? The costs have been repurposed in a manner of speaking. Like, suddenly, digital equipments are required now. Earlier, you didn't need an equipment. Now you need certain equipments for you to learn. Earlier, the learning was restricted to few years. Now it's almost lifelong learning. I can't kind of say that I've set aside some money and my education is over. I really don't know. Like health, we keep saving for health because we believe health issues can crop up anytime. In fact, ironically, health issues come up as you grow. In education also, we see a trend of, I don't know when I'll be obsolete, and I don't know when I have good enough skills for livelihoods. So in some sense, the repurposed cost is something that we need to be cognizant of, and also with all the technology obsolescence and the skilling obsolescence that is happening, we need to be careful in terms of what we need to relearn and how much we should invest in this. But the good thing that has happened, and Kashyap would only agree, like many of the new age edtech companies have enabled modular learning that is possible now. Many of us don't even realize that few decades before, there was only one way to learn. Join a university or any other institute, stay for 2-3 years. There's nothing called exiting before that. If you exit before that, there's nothing that's worthwhile that you get. And then after all this, you get something which you're not even sure whether it is relevant. Imagine 3 years. It was okay during then. So the modular learning bit, and hence how you spend, also something that we need to be cognizant of when we are looking at spends in education.
Very important point. So Narayan, but I'll press you on this a little further so that we have something to work with. So if we break this down, give us some estimation that maybe young parents can work with when they are looking at education needs for their child, because now these needs, as you're saying, along with your traditional tuition fee, etc., or your traditional K-12 learning, and perhaps additional classes. Now there's coding. There's all kinds of add-on learning that parents are also looking to do. So maybe even a rough ballpark, some as an example would help. And then the other category, if you're looking at someone who's in their late 20s, early 30s, constantly having the need to upskill, because we all plan for our car, we plan for our house, we plan, people even put aside or start saving for their marriages. But I rarely hear of people planning and putting aside money for their ongoing learning and upskilling program.
No, good question. Suppose I take education the way we categorize in the traditional sense. There is some primary education, there is secondary education, there is tertiary education. Now, in each of these three phases, you're seeing a lot of changes that has a direct impact on how much money you should have or what kind of services that you should avail. For example, early childcare and education was non-existent in India when I was a kid, or many of us in the early stages. In the past 20 years, early childcare or early stage education, preschooling, whatever name you call it, has become a reality, and that is expensive. So you need to start from actually putting or looking at spending money in education right since perhaps the kid is born, or right since 2 years or so that in early stages you invest more on what is called as concept learning, or what is called as learning through not the 3 R's as it is traditionally known, by various other means. And in here, augmented sources of learning, tutorials, whatever name you call it, you need to set aside money for that, right? And as you grow, you add on to the repertoire of what are the sources in which you can learn, and then you hit upon the secondary education phase. In India, if I can be honest, the one thing that occupies every parent's mind is the competitive exam. The number of seats that you have in higher education versus the number of people is disproportionately high. So what do? You have a competitive exam, and you better prepare for it, and you win in that competitive exam if you want to be counted as one of those who got better. So there is the money that you need to set aside for many competitive exams, but you don't know which direction that you're going. That's more on the secondary education bit. And then there are a lot of supplementary education that you learn as you go into this. Like it could be certain skills that you pick up, or it could be certain hobbies that you pick up. All those things happen when the child is from 10 to 15 years. Then comes higher education. Now, higher education throws up a lot of opportunities, right? per se, higher education costs have gone up, and with the digital formats coming in, there is flexibility that has happened. Also, the kind of options that one has to learn, right? And there are, massively online open courses that are seemingly free of cost when you enroll. But if you want an assessment to be done, or if you want to be counted as something that is relevant for jobs and other things that you want, you need to set aside money for that as well. For all these things, the preparation that you need, like the earlier what you had at home and what you need now for some of these learning are very different. And if you are an educational institution from the provider side, you're looking at very different more. The classroom of 2022 and 2023 is going to be significantly different from the classrooms of even 2015. National education policy just adds more color to it. So from a institution perspective also, you need to have more capital investment that will need to go to expand your classroom. For example, I'll just make a point. Vocational education has now become integral, or would be made integral part of your primary, secondary, and higher education. Do we have infrastructure ready for it? And you need investments that go into it. You need courses that needs to be added to it. You need trainers who need to be trained for kids who are doing this. So cost, setting aside money for doing this from an institution perspective is also very important. And then comes lifelong learning. So it's not as if you're 25 years old or 30 years old and you're done away with education. You need to provide for some money at each stage in your career, which I don't even know. Is it every 5 years? Is it every 10 years? Or should you bother about it when you're 50 years? We don't know that right now. But you better be prepared for boosters that you need to do in terms of reskilling and upskilling as you go. So I would think if one is prudent and as one is starting to plan, every stage in life you need to have a plan for spending in education. It could come in different shapes or size, but you need to plan for it.
Got that. Now let me just ask Kashyap. Kashyap, can you put some numbers to that so we can get the plan going with Amit?
I think on the education side, especially when we come to digital education, the interesting thing is that there is such a broad range. So when it comes to discussion on pricing, this is one of the few areas where to learn a specific skill, it could start from $10, it could go up to $100,000, right? And I mean, in rupee terms, I mean, from 500 rupees to 50 lakh rupees. I mean, so it's like there are all kinds of spectrums of education which are available. I think a large part, so when we think about financing, typically the entire, if I look at the two journeys, that the entire period in school, when a kid is basically going through school from, let's say, 1st standard to 10th standard, 11th, 12th standard, that is more education that is going on every year. And I don't think parents today plan in terms of having a corpus for it. It's more part of the regular expensing, that whatever you're earning, a large part of it is going to go into spending for that education. The same thing is happening for the learn as you go in your career, that most of the people who are working professionals who come to us and take many of our programs, for them it's essentially more this, that this is something that is an investment into their career. A part of their salary will go into investing in this program, and then they are going to kind of pay it off over a few years and then look at the next program. I think the part where building a corpus becomes very critical is more the graduation or post-graduation, as we call it, that when a person gets out of school and then is thinking about what is the program that is going to get him his first job, right? That's essentially the 80% of the entire discussion for a parent or for somebody who's planning his finances is more around that. And over there, what I see is more this, that online learning is actually creating a lot of new options which were earlier not possible at all. So for example, Simplilearn has partnered with universities like Purdue, MIT, Caltech. These are international, very, very reputed universities, and we've collaborated to launch postgraduate programs with them. And these are programs which are available at around 2.5 lakh rupees in India, right? So I mean, you get a postgraduate certificate at a 2.5 lakh kind of an expense, and that is a program that is focused on career first skills, right? So this is not just a just a program to basically do a post graduation. It is focused on whether it's data science or cloud. So that's where the jobs are. And those kind of programs suddenly give very different options. So I think what I expect over the next 5 to 10 years is more this, that there's going to be significant rethink in terms of after, let's say, completing 12th, what should a person be doing? There have been a lot of traditional notions saying that, okay, I should do a 4-year degree, I should do a 5-year degree and stuff like that. One, you are investing 4-5 years into that. Second, I think as Amit mentioned, US already has this entire concept of the debt trap, that a lot of people basically get into a debt trap. They'll basically take a $150,000 loan in US, and then they are paying it off over 10-15 years, right? So I think the entire role that digital plays is more this, that in this space, how do you innovate and you give interesting education options which are more focused on the real outcome. That if you finally want to get a rewarding career and be able to do well for yourself in life, what kind of a program is going to be focused on that and result in the right outcomes. But having said that, I think in terms of building the corpus, it ranges anywhere from a lakh, 10, 15, 20 lakhs. I think depends on the person and what he's exactly planning, and definitely it requires proper thought process in terms of building towards it, mainly for this graduate, postgraduate period. Post that, upskilling, I think there are a lot of different options. So upskilling, I think the programs also range from as low as 20,000-30,000 rupees to few lakhs. And over there, what we are seeing is more lot of the fintech options coming in, allowing people who are already in jobs to pay as you go, for pay as little as 3,000 rupees a month and do a program that is actually focused on fast tracking their career. So over there, we actually see a lot of solutions which are actually helping people pay as you go and doesn't hit them as a big expense. So it's not as though you have to pay 10 lakhs today. It's more that you will pay 5,000 every month and kind of keep upskilling in areas that help you in your career. So I mean, that's the overall mix as I see it.
Sure, got that. Okay, now Amit, for the brass tacks questions, the concept of planning for all of this. Now, one thing we know that the insurance industry does offer are child plans, and I know for a fact because I did a couple of conversations on this. I think the smartest thing that's working in favor of this product is the fact that there is a waiver of premium concept, right? Where even in the unfortunate event of the parent's demise, the plan continues, the future premiums are waived off. But you tell us, from scratch really, what all does the life insurance industry have to offer to people who are looking at creating that corpus for either their children or for themselves?
We can say all we want, but this is still going to be a major cost. And you have to be really planned for it. And so what's very important is, I think when you say you need to plan for education, you need to first set a goal for yourself. What is it that you're really looking at? It could not be very specific to a university, but it could be specific to a course, it could be specific to a degree or whatever. And then you have to start investing on it. And when you say investment, investment is going to depend on a lot of things. It's going to depend, of course, the first and foremost is going to be on your income. It's also going to be dependent on your risk-taking appetite. Look, not all instruments are there for everyone. Also, the time horizon. Are you looking at a 5-year, 10-year? So different instruments for different horizons. And you've also got to look at market conditions, inflation, etc., and then arrive at this. One thing we also tell everybody is you need to have the right mix of asset allocation. The age-old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So you need to have a very diversified portfolio. And this is also one of the unfortunate learnings that has come out from the COVID-19 pandemic. Diversify risk and have a more balanced portfolio. So building on that, investors can actually use a goal-based approach to asset allocation. Suppose one has a 10-year investment goal. Since the investment horizon is longer, the investor can start off with higher allocation of equities and gradually start reducing equity allocation and switching to debt, liquid fund as they approach the maturity term of the policy. This will help to protect the wealth created from investing in equities over the long term. So once you decide the asset class, the key is to stick to it for the long term by making systematic investments toward it. See, life insurance also provides you ULIPs, and ULIPs have this huge benefit of it not just insures your life, invests in market. The biggest, and of course, up to 2.5 lakhs a year, it gives you the benefit of taxation also. And the biggest advantage that I feel that ULIPs have is the ability to switch between funds. So depending on how the markets go, you can yourself, or with the help of your consultant or your advisor, you can switch between equity, debt, or the right kind of funds at that time where you think you can beat the markets. So if you put all these things together, I think if you have your goals clear, you have your risk appetite, you have your money set aside, and we have the right kind of plans for you after that. And I think if you invest, you should be well on way to achieve these expenses that are going to come up for your or maybe your child's education. And like the two gentlemen have been saying, education is no longer just for your children. Education for even for people like me and all of us here is for us to keep upskilling, because if you want to survive, or something that Narayan said, are we going to end up becoming obsolete, all of us?
Yeah, absolutely. So Amit, just to follow up on that, I mean, you mentioned ULIPs. ULIPs, I guess, they can be used by anybody, right? I mean, to meet whichever goal in education could be one of them. Whereas a child plan is something that I'm guessing younger parents should look at, because that's where you should ideally be invested for at least 10 odd years to build that corpus. So would that be the right way of looking at it?
See, the fact of the matter is, finally, it's your money you invest. It's finally up to you what the goal you set for yourself. Even for the child plan, finally, when the money comes to you, it's how it's positioned that you use it for your child's plan. The unit-linked plan also, you could invest in it, and the returns that come to you, say you pay for say 5 years or 7 years, and 10 years or 15 years later when the policy matures, the money that comes, you utilize it for your child's plan, child education, or whatever the expenses you need. Yes, child's plan, the one you are talking about, are more traditional products. They would certainly have better guarantees, or more, let's just say, but they would slightly be more on the conservative side also. So if you look at it, that's what I said. The first and foremost thing I said is going to be your own risk-taking appetite. If you have very little risk-taking appetite, then yes, those are the plans you should be going for, where the guaranteed returns are there.
Okay. So if someone is talking about a medium risk profile investor, and someone who's young, so therefore can have more of an equity orientation, typically when you're going to invest in products like these, what is the right expectation to have in terms of returns?
See, honestly, if you ask me, I would say it would be on you can comfortably see on the low double 10, 11% is the kind of stuff you can look at on a long-term horizon. And I'm being conservative there. But, that is keeping in mind that there are no untoward incidents, some global pandemic hitting you. But otherwise, you can certainly look at those as being conservative numbers to go with.
Got that. So those are some perhaps broad sort of framework points that one can work with. Let's take very quick final thoughts with all of the experts. So Narayan, back to you. What is the one tip and one advice that you'd like to leave viewers with when it comes to looking at upskilling themselves or their children and planning for the same?
I would think, keep learning, keep unlearning, and keep relearning, unless you are ready for something that you didn't know was happening, and you are ready to kind of embrace those things. You're going to live in a difficult world.
Okay, that's well put. Kashyap, final word from you.
So I have two thoughts that I'd like to leave everybody with. One is more on the education side, which is more the side, especially for working professionals. I think it's extremely critical for people to realize that every 2-3 years they should be figuring out what is the new skill that they picked up. I think this needs to become a very, very disciplined approach. It's extremely critical that people invest time and figure out what they should be learning. Otherwise, at the end of 7-8 years, they will start seeing, some kind of a plateau, and then it will be more playing catch up. So I think being proactive, figuring out what skills can help fast track, I think that should be a very disciplined call. People should invest in that. The second thought that I would like to leave is more on the finance side. No, I'm not a investment advisor, and I'm sure that Amit will be able to add more value. But one of the things that typically, let's say, so we have a large team, right? And a lot of things that I see in my team, and we try to help them in terms of making the right kind of calls, is more this that there's a lot of discussion around investment products and stuff like that. But if I look at people by and large, I still see the biggest thing holding people back is that they don't even save. And if they do save, it goes into real estate and gold, right? So I think one thing that I leave my team with, and I'm just taking this opportunity to share that larger idea that it's important that you save. So everything starts with saving and then put it into financial instruments, extremely critical. Otherwise, things get tougher. So I think that's something that everybody should be doing.
Oh, absolutely. That's sound advice. Couldn't agree more. And I think that would be useful thoughts for our audience as well. All right, gentlemen, this has been a good chat. Thank you very much for making time for this conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.